Hello there, and welcome to the first episode of Let's Get Fiscal, the official podcast of the Australian Employment Party. My name is Ian Dooley.
Hi, and I'm Tim Jones.
And I just want to say, first of all, you can find out more about us at australianemploymentparty.org. We've got a Facebook group, Australian Employment Party. You can follow myself on Twitter at Ian Dooley or Tim at FourthLeft2. And we welcome your questions and comments on the hashtag ozmmt. It's ozmmt. And this is our very first podcast, and we want to lay the foundations here with a topic that's very important to understand, and that's that taxes don't pay for things.
Yeah, it should be interesting. It's obviously going to be our first one, so I'm sure that we'll have to forgive everyone and ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. So the big thing, the big idea here is that every single policy debate in this country happens within the context of affordability. People talk about getting revenue. They talk about corporate tax dodges. They talk about the government needing to raise taxes or cut spending and things like that. And at the root of all this is a belief that the government has to get some money before it can spend some money. And often people talk about the government like it's a household. The budget, even the wording in the budget, we've got to balance the budget and return to surplus. But it's all completely untrue.
Well, that's the mystery, isn't it? It's a great mystery for the average working guy, the average everyman, is that we just assume, and we are told by certain members of the political class, that the federal economy is just like a household economy, and it's just not true, is it?
No, well, it's weird because both ends of the political spectrum have this wrong. So what's really bad about the state of opposition in politics today is that both neoliberals, or the liberals are the neoconservative, neoliberal people, are talking about cutting spending and returning to surplus and all this kind of thing. The other side of the equation, who are supposed to be progressive, are still saying the same things. They still say we need to get revenue. They still say we need to raise taxes and tax the rich. We need to get money before we can spend money. They're complaining about different behaviors, but using the same flawed framework. So at the core of this idea is the kind of notion of what money is, and the fact that governments don't have to get money before they start spending it. In fact, it's the opposite, because governments create money when they spend.
Because our government prints its own money, doesn't it? That's the basic truth. Is we live in a fiat economy. The government decides to print money or not.
That's it. And the funny thing is the terminology printing money. It's you can say that like it's creating money.
But it's not cash, is it? It's
even
just
that's
a number.
not right. It's even not cash mostly nowadays.
There's somebody in Treasury, isn't there? This is, I think we had a previous talk here. You talked about where does the money come from? Who decides when the money is created from nothing, like manna from heaven? So there's somebody in Treasury who signs off on the right for the Treasury to pay money into banks. Is that right?
That's right. The best description of this is actually on the Reserve Bank of Australia's website. So this is totally not controversial. There's no opinion here. This isn't like people who say, oh, we should, return to the gold standard, or, oh, like the Rothschilds are running the central bank. This is just blatantly provable, irrefutable fact. Like the Earth is round, climate change is happening, and the government creates money when it spends. You can't deny it, right? So if you need proof that it's just not us mad, raving, talking heads saying this, you can go to the RBA website. You just type into Google RBA domestic market operations, and the page that comes up, you search that page for the word expenditure. And what it says is expenditure by the government credits ES funds to a financial institution, and tax receipts have the opposite effect. And what that means in words that people can actually understand is that the government is creating money by spending and destroys money by taxing. In much the same way as points are created on a scoreboard when someone hits a run or scores a try
Sure.
or shoots
Yeah,
a basket or
and
whatever.
where do the points come from? Who
Right.
makes up the points? Yeah, you said this before, and it's very interesting because we got 320 in the cricket today, and did the points come in a truck?
Yeah. Like, did they have to
You
borrow
know,
them?
is there a point factory somewhere? No.
Yeah.
So dollars are just like points or runs or tries, whatever. So
Right.
it's interesting. And just on this point, can I just go the other way when you say that when the government taxes, where does that money go back into? Do they destroy those points, or can you?
Yeah.
Because this is, I don't understand this stuff. You do.
So yeah. So it's crazy. Like, people say, "Oh, uh, I pay my taxes, therefore I am paying the wages of the PM." That's one thing. Or, like, I'm paying the public service wages. Or another
Mm.
thing is that I'm paying my taxes, therefore these dole bludgers,
Yeah, it's very
like, I'm
common.
I'm paying for them.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
It's a
it's a
really
great way of crowd manipulation. But when you pay tax, say I pay $25,000
yeah.
in taxes, and then after the tax return, all that sort of stuff. It's say August or something like that. So I pay $25,000 to the government. What do they do with those dollars, those points, those imaginary things that we value so much? What do they do with them?
It
Do
just
they vaporize them?
The number is changed down instead of up. So you could imagine that the RBA, like the Reserve Bank of Australia, is a spreadsheet, right? Just that I'm sure that they don't use Excel to run the Reserve Bank of Australia. Maybe they do, but like government, I wouldn't put it past government to run everything on Excel. But
Oh, they've used whiteboards for great. Yeah, yeah. Don't
so
worry.
so if you imagine a spreadsheet, right, and then every sheet, you can have different sheets on a spreadsheet. Every
Yep.
sheet is a different bank, like Commonwealth, NAB, ANZ, Bendigo. And then each row in the spreadsheet is a different person's account. And say you have an account with the CBA, and you're row number 10, Tim Jones, right? And you've got a number there. If you pay taxes to the federal government, now this doesn't include GST because GST is collected by the states. Everything we're saying here does not apply to state governments.
Right.
But the federal government, when you execute the pay instruction, all that happens in the end of it is that your number goes down.
Right.
The money doesn't go anywhere and is not used for anything. So taxes don't really pay for things. The role of taxation is very, very different.
Okay. Well, like I guess you can see me wondering about that. So that you're saying that the money is tied to me, like these numbers. Like I've got my own personal scoreboard with the government. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so you've got a personal scoreboard at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia.
Mm.
Now, there's two ways that number can go up. One is that you borrow money from the Commonwealth Bank.
Yeah.
In that case, the government has nothing to do with it. In that
No.
case,
No.
the Commonwealth Bank just makes the number go up.
Yeah.
But that's private credit creation. It's a much more dense topic and something that
Yeah.
I'd
Oh,
like to
yeah.
cover
No,
later
I'm
on.
happy with that.
So
I think
then,
it's just,
but
just
then,
this.
if we say when it's time for you to pay your taxes, the CBA, right, in their account at the Reserve Bank has to have sufficient reserves for you to pay tax. So you can't pay tax with money that the Commonwealth Bank created. You can't pay tax with a deposit created by a loan from the Commonwealth Bank. Taxes have to be paid at the federal level from reserves, what they call exchange settlement funds. So, or another term for it is high-powered money, or some people call it inside money and outside money. So it's true that there's a lot of stuff going on with this thing called positive money, which is the most misguided piece of economic drivel I've ever heard. But basically, they talk about how banks create all the money, and it's true. Banks create a lot of money by issuing loans. And loans create deposits on one side of the balance sheet, and then there's a loan on the other side of the balance sheet. When the loan gets repaid, it all nets out to zero. So private credit creation all nets out to zero. The only way that the private sector gets net financial assets is from the government, and then when the government taxes, it destroys those net financial assets.
Okay, well, I think my role here is just to be the doofus. I'm quite happy to be a
Sorry,
doofus in public. Yeah.
there was too much jargon in that one, wasn't there?
Oh yeah. No, I've got all sorts of words to describe that particular phenomenon. But the main thing is and this is the clincher. This is the real thing. And people who have read MMT, I know they've had this this moment in Damascus, whatever they call it. They really realised what is the missing link. It's the missing link between their understanding and what is really happening. Their previous understanding what's really happening. So that if the Commonwealth Bank wants to pay me money, give me money, then they get money from the Federal Reserves.
Yeah, well, no, not necessarily. So if the private banks just can create money, they're licensed to create money.
Right.
Well, they're licensed to create deposits. They're not licensed to create notes and coins. And they're not licensed to create high-powered money or exchange settlement funds. So, but they are licensed to issue debt in Australian dollars, and then you can go and spend that money around the place. You can spend it on a house. You can buy a car with it. If you're really hard up, then you might borrow money to pay rent. I've had a few friends that were in that sort of situation. So it depends on what you're borrowing the money for, but and usually there might be a contract with the bank where you say that I'm borrowing this money to buy a house. And then you can't use it to buy anything else because they got the security against the house and everything. So that's private credit creation isn't actually constrained by reserves at the Reserve Bank, and it's a common fallacy that there's a money multiplier or that banks are lending out money that they get in deposits. It's not true. Banks just lend money according to how profitable it will be for them to do so. And they worry about getting the reserves to settle up later on. The reason they need reserves at all is because imagine you have an account with the NAB and I have an account with CBA, and I get a loan from the Commonwealth Bank and I get a loan for 16 grand, and I go to you and I buy your car for 16 grand. At the end of the day, the CBA has to give the NAB $16,000 in reserves. So they can't settle up between each other with this phony baloney money that they create. They have to settle up with real dollars. Created by the government, and then they can go and borrow that money from someone else, and they can borrow it from the government, and they can do all sorts of things. So when it comes back to settling up with either the government or interbank lending, then you need to have that real money, that reserve money, and the reserve money is also what gets converted to notes and coins. So if you go to the CBA and you withdraw your money in cash, they have to have the reserves to turn into cash.
Well, that's right. And this is where that perhaps there's a mix-up. We're talking about their reserves as against the Reserve Bank, right?
Yeah. So
there's a mix-up, and we don't want this to be confusing for anyone. And then this is my role, is to clarify these things, because to show the limits of my intelligence and my understanding of these things. So it's not all about me, but I'm really interested in understanding this too. So that, of course, the bank needs reserves.
Yeah.
It does have reserves. Mm-hmm. But when you borrow money from it, then it creates that money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It doesn't need the reserves to make its own reserves to make that money. It actually just gets permission from some guy at the Reserve Bank to say, yeah, you can make that money.
Yeah, banks are licensed to create money. They're licensed to create deposits. They're not licensed to create notes and coins.
No, well, that's the mint, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the mint. Only the mint is licensed to create notes and coins.
Yeah.
Only the Treasury or only the government or only the central bank can create reserves. But the CBA can create debt denominated in Australian dollars, and people can go and use that money. But then
any bank, any
of the private banks can create debt, and I can create debt. I can issue you an IOU denominated in Australian dollars.
Oh, I'd be happy to take it.
Right. So I just say, hey, Tim, here's an IOU. It says $10, 10 dooley bucks, and I'm going to give it to you, and it's denominated in Australian dollars. Now you go and try and spend that somewhere.
Well, maybe, it's pretty hard, because they don't have the trust that we share, with everyone else.
Exactly. So anyone can create money. The problem is getting it accepted. And the government is the ultimate authority of the Australian dollar. The government creates and destroys Australian dollars. When they spend, they create money, and when they tax, they destroy it. And so the role of taxation is not to get money to fund government. The role of taxation is not to take your money, you worked hard and you paid your taxes, and the government took the money that you gave them and gave it to some doll bludger, and all he does is sit on the couch. And what a failure! And
Well,
why do I have to pay all this money? Now that's a real problem, because it pits one side of society against the other.
Well, and that's politically useful too. So
right.
I don't know. Are these falsehoods? Are these myths
completely
maintained purely so that people can be manipulated about these sort of things?
Well,
I'm not looking at a conspiracy theory, but it just does seem strange, surely. And one thing that is very well known, I'll just go off on an aside here, is politicians tend to ignore very, very intelligent, well-informed and highly experienced public servants who understand all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, surely you and I and Bill Mitchell and the 4 or 5 people on Twitter that tweet about MMT aren't the only ones that know this, right? Obviously there are people in Treasury that know all about this stuff. Of course there are. So politically there's I think that there's a it's weird.
Well,
it's all coming from the 70s. It's all coming from monetarists and Milton Friedman, and there's a lot of people with weirdo ideals. My hunch really is that neoliberalism, basically people who are fiercely neoliberal.
Well, and to define a neoliberal, it's a simple definition of a neoliberal is that somebody who believes that everything should be privatised. That's the basic definition.
Right, yeah. Small government. Small government.
Small government, that's all things.
Yeah.
So when we're saying neoliberals, that's all we're talking about. People who want to sell off everything and then have the private market, the economy run everything.
Yeah, and it's also that the government is no different from households and firms. That the government kind of operates the same as a business. So. And there's also the Austrian school, and they've got their own weirdo things going on. So everyone's got these things, these little agendas, and somehow we forgot that this was the case. Somehow politically, I don't know, the term that Laura Tingle uses in her quarterly essay is political amnesia. Somehow we just let all of this knowledge go in the 70s and 80s, because between the end of the Second World War and the 70s, when the oil shocks came in, we had a policy of full employment. And we had a policy we had huge deficits, the deficits, whatever was required. And
it just seems like we're at the end of decades of Chinese whispers.
Yeah, basically, that's it. There's a lot of inaccuracy.
The truth isn't out there.
So I think that the important thing about this, the important outcome of this taxes don't pay for things, right, is that you don't have a situation where one sector of society is producing all the output, which is being consumed by all the poor people, right? That welfare isn't somehow taking money from rich workers and giving it to poor workers, because that's something that a lot of people complain about. And the interesting thing about modern monetary theory is that it has outcomes, fiscal policy outcomes, which could be considered both conservative and progressive. For example, the role of taxation isn't to get money. So the progressive end of the scale, they say, we need to tax the rich, churches should pay tax, and we've got to catch these tax dodgers with the the Panama Papers and everything. And it's true that tax dodging is not good, but not for that reason. We could still fund everything without the tax dodging money. In theory, right? There's a constraint there. It's a resource constraint and there's an inflation constraint. But it's not that we have to get that money first before we can spend it.
No,
and
okay. Well,
at the conservative end, we don't have to cut spending in order to somehow balance the budget. We're not going to run out of money.
But my role again is to interrupt, and so that if you, like for instance, when Joe Hockey was doing his thing, with his first budgets and all that sort of thing, he made the decision. I think didn't he give the Reserve Bank $6 or $8 billion?
Yeah, $9 billion.
Didn't he hand it? And where did he get that from? Do you know what I mean?
I don't even know what that was. What the
It's
giving.
so bizarre.
I don't understand
And
what
they
the
didn't
giving
ask
of
for it.
money.
They didn't want it. And as far as I understand, they don't. Since they make the money anyway, well,
They don't have it. Yeah, I
did they just disappear $8 billion from?
I don't know.
Where did it come from? Where did it go?
Yeah. Where did it come from, Cut Eye Joe? I want to take that one on notice. I want to take the one on notice because I
Yeah,
completely
all
forgot
right,
about
yeah.
that,
Next time.
and I want to look it up because I want to. Bill Mitchell must have written about it, right?
Oh
Nothing,
yeah, oh,
nothing happens in this country without Bill Mitchell writing about it. And
yeah. Bill
his
Mitchell is on Billy Blog, isn't it? At Billy
right,
Blog.
yeah,
Yeah,
at Billy_blog, and he also
yeah,
writes at bilbo.economicoutlook.net.
yeah,
But if you just type Bill Mitchell MMT, you'll get the
yeah.
blog.
That's right.
Basically, he's the guru. He's the economist. I'm not an economist. I just did a lot of research on this stuff. Started a party because I couldn't bear to listen anymore to political discussions which talk about the need to return to surplus and the need to tax and
Well,
cut spending.
that should be made clear too, because you're not a politician. I'm not a politician.
No,
And we aren't paid to do this.
we're going to become politicians, right? I mean, we're starting a political
Oh,
party.
well, it's entirely possible. Yeah.
So I think that it's the next progression from this, right? If we just start, okay, so we've established taxes don't pay for things. It's demonstrably true. It's written on the Reserve Bank of Australia's website. The government can just spend money. The next thing people always say to this is, "Oh right, you just want the government to print money then, so therefore we'll just get inflation. We'll be like Zimbabwe and the Weimar Republic."
That's the immediate. I think that's the immediate comeback. That's what my son said to me,
yeah, everyone always says it.
and it's perfect time to address it on the first show.
So, let's hit the nail on the head here. Hit the nail on the head, nip it in the bud, hit this one on the head. Anyway, all government spending is printing money. That's the first thing. So I think when people have that reaction, what they're thinking is that there's an amount of money in circulation, right? There's money going around.
Well, that's where we should differentiate, isn't it? There's money in circulation, which is, any money can be converted into cash, isn't it? So we're talking about it's one and the same thing, yeah.
So, but when you talk about money, when you talk about like cash, notes and coins in circulation, okay, cool. Notes and coins are literally they're literally
just for confusion's sake,
right? Those notes and coins literally are in circulation, and they degrade and then they rip and break and they go through the washing machine or whatever. So those money things are literally in circulation, but they're not money. They're not really money. Like, they're not what the money is that the government creates and taxes. They're just a record of it. The same as a credit card or anything. They're no more real than a credit card or a spreadsheet. So at the Reserve Bank. So all government spending is printing money. And all taxation does is destroy it again. So
they do destroy it, don't they?
It just disappears.
That's what I was talking about before. It just disappears.
The number just goes down in the spreadsheet. So you pay your federal income tax. All that happens is that your demand deposit account, the number in the spreadsheet gets reduced.
Right. Demand deposit. Now that's going to be one of the next programs, and there's something I'm going to have to get my head around.
Yeah, private banking. We'll deal with that later on. It's
okay.
It's a big old headache, that one. But the real fundamental thing here is that spending creates money and taxation destroys it. So all government spending is printing money. Every year, the budget, however much money the government is going to spend, that money is being created as it is spent. So there's no like, the government is constantly printing money. If you want to say it like that, it's always happening. That's the only way the government spends.
And so that there are constraints. Even MMT says that there are constraints on how much can be spent, because there are two things MMT always look at, is inflation and employment. Is that right? And that's hence the name of the party. It's the Employment Party. It's all about.
Yeah, that's right. So employment. So inflation is the result of the government spending beyond the productive capacity of the society, spending more than what there is, trying to buy too many things. Like, there's 10 things for sale and the government tries to buy 11. That's when you get inflation. The productive capacity of the society has to do with things like factories and machines and energy and stuff, right? Those are all resources. But it also has to do with manpower, people who are going to, men and women that are employed in government and private enterprise. That's the productive capacity of the society. And it's the most obvious one. So if you wanted to figure out what the productive capacity of the society is to produce, I don't know, cars, it would be hard. You'd have to figure out like the raw materials and all this. There'd be this big calculation. If you want to figure out the unused productive capacity of the society in people, it's easy. Everyone who's unemployed. Everyone who's unemployed can be hired by the government with no inflation risk, as long as you do it properly.
And that's where we're going to lead with future programs, isn't it? Because we're coming up to the half hour. So how do you want to finish this, Ian?
So I just want to finish off by saying that by finishing off this thing of the differentiation between money in circulation and then government somehow printing money to cause inflation. So the role of taxation... the government only spends by printing money, and the role of taxation is to destroy the money. That's what taxation does at the federal level. It just destroys money. And you destroy money for various reasons. You destroy money to control inflation. If there's too much money going in and you've spent too much and now everyone has too much money, you can tax to get the money out again. You can destroy money in certain sectors of the society to improve the equality, the distribution of money. You can destroy people's money to disincentivize certain behaviors. So you can tax pollution. You can tax the volume.
But it's a bit like a fish tank, isn't it? It's just swirling around.
That's it. Yeah.
That's the government's role in terms of fiscal policy, is it?
Put money in, take money out. The reasons that you do that are, they're many and complex, but that's basically the role of fiscal policy is to put money in and take money out. There is nothing that says that the amount of money you put in has to equal the amount of money you take out and vice versa.
So what's holding them back? What's holding them back, Ian?
This is the ultimate question that everyone always asks. Now, I've watched a lot of lectures on modern monetary theory. I've watched Warren Mosler and Randall Wray and Bill Mitchell and Stephanie Kelton and Christine Desan and Michael Hudson and everyone, right? And then at the end of it, someone always puts their hand up and says, so hold on. If this is true, because it sounds like their mind is blowing, and they're like, how can this be true? But if this is true, what the hell is going on? Why are all governments not operating like this? Why do I turn on the radio every day and hear people talking about affordability constraints and we don't have enough money and the government's running out of money and we've got the debt and we've got to reduce the deficit?
Is it
what's
only,
going on?
Is it only because this is what people can understand? They only play with Duplo.
No.
Lego play, so that they're only talking the most. Are we just being treated like children?
No, I don't think so. I don't think genuinely Scott Morrison doesn't know this.
Yeah, sorry. Excuse me, laughing.
Like genuinely, Scott Morrison is not aware.
No, I don't think he is.
Is not aware that this is. Malcolm Turnbull may or may not. I don't know. The guy's a bit of a shadowy character. I can't really work him out. He may know. But then he can't say it. Like I met with Bill Mitchell a few weeks ago, and he said that he met with politicians and told them this, and they got it, and then they said, "But I can't say that."
That's what I'm saying.
Not
isn't it?
I don't believe you, but I can't say that. So
is it like the Emperor's New Clothes sort of thing?
Yeah, well, some of them know. Like you and I can't be the only ones that know, right? Some people know in Treasury, in Parliament, whatever. But I think that no one really internalizes it to completion. Like you can get people, taxes don't pay for things, the government creates money, and then they say, okay, fine, but we can't just print money, and that's where they cut off. That's where they stop thinking about it, and they go back to everyone's got their positions established. The rich folks, the conservatives, the dole bludgers and whatever, I don't want to pay their taxes. I pay my taxes, I don't want to pay for their welfare, whatever. And the poor people have got this whole thing, chip on their shoulder and the class warfare thing, right? So everyone's got their little position. They've got their position worked out and they're really quite comfortable with it. So you come to them and say something like taxes don't pay for things. Cerebrally, right, they get it, but they cut off at the point where they find a way to get out of it. And I think that genuinely, Peter Costello believes that the private sector should be responsible for running everything. Peter Costello genuinely believes that he was doing a good thing by running a surplus. Paul Keating ran a surplus, and we had a recession afterwards. Every time we have a surplus, we have a recession. So I think that there's genuinely a lack of understanding all the way to the top.
Sure. Okay, then. Now, what do you want to cover in the next program?
So the next one is deficits are good. Now, that's a very broad brush comment.
No, that'll be fun. I'm sure we'll get a few listeners for that one.
Yeah, so deficits are good. Don't forget, everyone, tweet at us, hashtag ozmmt, OZMMT.
Yep.
I'm at Ian Dooley. Tim's at Fourth Left 2.
Yeah, and I'm on all the time, you know, get addicted to the...
Yeah, I actually hadn't touched Twitter for about a year before.
Yeah, you'll get better. You'll get better.
So, and then we're also on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group to search Australian Employment Party, and also, of course, AustralianEmploymentParty.org. And you can sign up there by just clicking the link and put your details in if you want to be a member.
Okay, and we had a discussion before, and we want to assure people that this is a long-term project. We're not looking for votes in the next election. We are looking to make sure that we can actually clear the fog on this subject so that we can have an intelligent debate about things instead of the usual to and fro.
That's it. I want the conversation to change. I don't care what your policies are. Let's just change the way we debate them.
Yeah, please. Let's use just common sense.
It's excruciating.
I don't know. It's terrible. It's terrible. The world's made up of atoms, you know, but somehow we live in this mystery land that nobody understands. You know, it's like mummy and daddy don't talk to the kids about it. You know, it's very strange, very strange. Okay, so is that it? Are we all done?
Yeah, I think that's good. Taxes don't pay for things. Role of taxation. Okay. You know, printing presses. I think we got everything I wanted to cover.
And next show, deficits are good.
Deficits are good.
Great. Thanks very much, Ian.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.